What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. Today, joined by my co-host, Anthony Rivardo. Today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a discussion about the Rangers. They're kind of going through another little bit of a slump right now. There's definitely a lot of teams that have been playing better than the Rangers as of late. And we know heading into the season after the first few weeks, we were like, the Rangers are Cup contenders, number one team in the league. But something's off. Something has changed. I don't think it's anything with the Rangers being a fluke or frauds or anything, but there's definitely some problems that are becoming a lot clearer as the Rangers continue to struggle. But we're going to dive right into this discussion and see what is the problem, how they can solve it, and everything. But before we do, make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss a notification. If you're watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review and be sure to leave your thoughts on the Rangers' recent stretch of play down in the comment section below because we'd love to hear what you guys think as well. And lastly, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers on both Instagram and X. But let's get right into this discussion. Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the Rangers' recent stretch of play?
I'm doing great. I'm not as concerned as others are with the Rangers' recent stretch of play. Like, I understand they've had some ugly losses, they've had some disappointing performances, but their last 10 games, they're 6-3-1. You look around the league, if you just pull up the standings, that's the best stretch in the last 10, minus the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes are 6-1-3, and then you've got the Penguins who are also 6-3-1, and then the rest in the division 4-3-3, 4-4-2, 5-4-1. I still think that they're playing good enough hockey. I still think that they're playing at the top of the Metro. And when you look around the league, I even think that they're still playing near the top of that. I still believe in this Rangers team. I believe in Peter Laviolette. And I know we're going to have a discussion over, some of the things that might give us grief, some causes for concern with this Rangers team. But overall, I am still confident in this team. And I think that they are still positioned to make a deep run into the postseason. And I think that they should still be considered strong contenders for the Stanley Cup.
I agree. The Rangers are still one of the best teams in the NHL, but you just look at how they started the season and then compared to now, something has changed. And I think you look at their last 10 games, that's 6-3-1. That is still kind of just mediocre. I know it's among the better of records in the last 10 around the league, but I don't know what's going on with them. But this isn't the same New York Rangers team that we have seen. So I am worried. I will say that I'm worried. I don't know if my faith has been shaken at all. There's room for concern, but if you're reaching for the panic button right now, definitely a little too soon. But you just look at the problems that have been going around throughout those last 10 games. The Rangers, they've taken a few losses, and of those losses, a lot of them have been to non-playoff teams. We're looking at a Rangers team that earlier in the season goes up against the Boston Bruins and blows them out of the water and puts up like 7 or 8 goals on them. I don't remember which it was, but then their last game that they played 2 nights ago against Montreal was like 26th out of 32 in the league standings. All of a sudden the Rangers are down 3-0 to that team. Eventually they were able to make a comeback and force a shootout, which they would ultimately lose in. But there's no reason why the Rangers, if they are as good as everyone makes them out to be, should be going to a shootout against Montreal. That should be a solid 2 or 3 goal victory for the Rangers. You look back, they had another loss against the Panthers a few games ago, and I know the Panthers are a lot better of a team, but it was a pretty devastating loss. And just throughout the season, you look back at some of the other losses they've had. Lost to Nashville, non-playoff team. Buffalo Sabres, non-playoff team. But then at the same time, they're going into these heavyweight matchups against top-of-the-league teams, such as they'll be doing tonight against Vancouver. And who knows what's going to happen at this rate based on the trend. The Rangers are probably going to blow them out of the water. Knock on wood again, because everyone will come at me in the comment section if I don't do that and we lose. But it's a weird problem that the Rangers have, just beating good teams and then getting destroyed by bad teams. And I don't know if there's an explanation for this, but it's definitely something that needs to change, because if the Rangers can find a way to beat these bad teams, all of a sudden they're on pace for having one of the best records of all time. So what are your thoughts on that and this weird problem the Rangers are going through?
Listen, they lack consistency and they lack focus, but not only do they lack consistency in their performance, they lack consistency in their lineup right now. And it's not any fault of the players. It's not any fault of Peter Laviolette. They've had a lot of injuries this season. And even if they have guys leave the lineup and come back a few games later, it still changes things. It still creates a little bit of uncertainty with the players and trying to get acclimated and get a chemistry forming when you've got guys like Capo Caco, who's been out, 2 months now? I know that he's nearing a return, but they've been without Capo Caco for a very long time. And, we've seen some defensive lapses from this team. Capo Caco doesn't have some of those lapses. Like, he definitely plays a big part in the way that the Rangers have struggled. Sometimes on the defensive end, Philip Hedl is still absent. Who knows when he's going to return to the lineup? Again, seems like he's making progress, could return soon. But you just look around this team. I think Pitlick got hurt, right? Brodzinski has not been playing well. There's some inconsistencies on this team, but again, a lot of it just stems from the fact that they're not staying healthy, and it's to no fault of their own, no fault of the coach or anything like that. They just need to get healthy and they need to play with more consistency. So I think once Capo Caco returns to the lineup, and maybe they make a couple other changes to the lineup, I think they're going to return to form. Like, they're out of form right now. They're very inconsistent. They need more focus for sure, and that's on Peter Laviolette to make sure that they get that focus. But I'm really not super concerned, just because I think a lot of their problems do stem from injuries and from problems within the lineup. And then if you want to take it a step further and talk about some of the weaknesses on this team, whether you have the injuries accounted for or not, I think that these are fixable issues, right? Like, these are issues that have solutions. I don't think it's going to cost the Rangers an arm and a leg or any type of fortune to add another right wing before season's end, or to add a center, or, there's options that we've discussed at the trade deadline, Eric, that we think are pretty affordable, definitely under the salary cap. And it would really just require them to move on from maybe a Blake Wheeler and a Barclay Goodrow, two players that we're not very high on and who have been super inconsistent. Ship them off and get somebody who brings that consistency and brings that intensity and that edge for the postseason. I think that's what's going to happen. And when it does, I think that we're going to be talking about this team being a Stanley Cup contender and a fearsome team in the Metro once again. So, and not like we're not still considering them that way. I still do. I still think this is a top team, but I don't know, Eric. I just think that injuries have really been what have held this team back over the past few weeks, past couple months. I think the Capo Caco injury, while maybe we didn't think it was going to be as devastating as some, I think that it proved to be a pretty important loss for this team. And once they get those players back and they add a couple other players to the lineup, I think that this is a good team, and really it's just been injuries holding them back.
Yeah, I'm happy that you brought up the injury thing, because when we asked the question, are the New York Rangers still Stanley Cup contenders? The reason that the answer is yes, they are still contenders, is because of the injuries. This entire season, I think the Rangers have played like 39 or 40 games at this point. Of those, however many games, I would say probably only like 5 of them their team has been fully healthy, and they've probably won like all 5 of those games. Capo Caco, especially, very close to a return. Peter Laviolette said today that he had pretty much no restrictions in practice, and he's very close to becoming a full participant in practice. So his return's right around the corner. But the injuries are a huge thing. Speaking of Capo Caco, you look at the impact he has on the Rangers. Sure, offensively, has he struggled in the games that he's played? Yes, he only has like 3 points in 20 games played, but he's very good with his puck control, his strength. His defense has significantly improved. And you look at the Rangers' just overall success with and without Caco. I don't know exactly what the record is, but it's like when the Rangers have Caco playing this season, incredible record. Since he's been injured, mediocre record at best. So, and then you take Philip Hedl into account. He's been out longer than 2 months. I think it was November 2nd, Philip Hedl got injured, and you've had the injuries to Fox and Lindgren, and I think there's Goudreau missed a couple games as well. Now Pitlick's out week to week. Igor and Quick were injured at some points of the season as well. There's a ridiculous amount of injuries. So it's kind of hard to just hear all these fans being like, oh, the Rangers, they're slipping. They were frauds. They just had a good hot start to the season. And since then, just reality's kicked in and they're not playing as good. I mean, yeah, maybe we haven't been as good as we were to start the season, but we haven't had a lot of our top players since the beginning of the year. And I forget what player said it, but someone had a quote earlier on in the year where it's like, we're having a lot of fun out there on the ice. We're a good, dangerous team. And the scary part is we're not even at our full potential yet because of all the injuries that were going on. But the one thing that I will say that it's hard to ignore is the Rangers defense and the goaltending as of late. There haven't been any injuries there in the defense. The goaltenders are healthy. And I'm very happy to say that Igor Shesterkin has bounced back. He has looked phenomenal in that over his last few starts. But Jonathan Quick there, reality kind of kicked in for him. He had an amazing start to the season. He was like 9-0-1 or something, hadn't lost a game in regulation throughout the majority of the season. But then you look at his last few starts, especially against Montreal 2 nights ago, that was bad. Of those 3 goals that Montreal scored, 2 of them, I would say, Jonathan Quick, you need to save that. They were very weak goals, and that's a little concerning because, I'm sure he'll bounce back, kind of like with Igor. Had a little bit of a rough stretch of play. He's going to bounce back. But then you look at the defense. Keandre Miller, half the time he's on the ice, he's looks like the best defender in the league. The other half the time, he's terrible. He's like the worst defenseman in the entire NHL. Braden Schneider has been inconsistent the entirety of the season. I'm at a point where I'm thinking maybe if the Rangers have money for it, go out and get a rental depth defender, someone like a veteran that has playoff experience that can kind of just fill in for Schneider for the remainder of the year. Fox has been great. Lindgren has been great. Even Trouba has been a little iffy the last few weeks, and he had a great start to the season. So the offense, I think, is perfect. We're scoring goals left and right. Panarin, Kreider, Zibanejad, Trocheck, they're all hot. Lafreniere breakout still underway. Amazing. Kako and Hedel hopefully back soon. Amazing. But the defense is where my biggest concern lies the most. I know that Jonathan Quick is going to bounce back. He will. But the defense, man, Keandre Miller, Braden Schneider, even Trouba, Gustafsson has slowed down a lot as well. Something needs to change. And kind of like what you said earlier, that all kind of comes on to Peter Laviolette as head coach. We saw him work magic once at the beginning of the year, turning this defensively mediocre team into one of the best. And now he kind of just has to do it again. And I will say that the reason I am so hopeful in him is because he's taking his time and he's figuring it out. If this problem were happening under Gerard Gallant, we would have seen the lineup be changed 30 different times, him just panicking, pulling players in and out of the lineup, making all these drastic moves. But Laviolette doesn't do that. We've barely seen any lineup changes this entire season unless there's been an injury. So I'm happy to see that Laviolette is sticking with his lines. There's Lindgren and Fox, Miller, Trouba, Gustafsson and Schneider. That hasn't changed at all unless Fox was injured. So Laviolette has a plan. They've been practicing a lot. I know these practices under Laviolette are a lot harder, more fast-paced, and they're actually trying to improve stuff under Laviolette, unlike Gerard Gallant, where he'd just be like, all right, go do the same drills every single day. So I am hopeful that the defense and the goaltending can turn things around and bounce back. Tonight is going to be a huge test for the Rangers. Vancouver, I think, has the best plus-minus in the entire league. They're like a plus 30-something, scored a lot more goals than have been scored against them. So the Rangers are going to have to show up tonight. Igor Shesterkin is the starter, so we'll get to see him play. The defense is going to need to be perfect. The offense is going to need to be perfect. But I'm hopeful that Laviolette is going to turn things around. Like I said, panic meter, very low. I think right now I'm only at like a 3 out of 10. That's even high, maybe like a 2 out of 10. But that's just my opinion on the defense and everything. I'm sure you feel the same way, though, Tony.
I do feel the same way. Again, my panic meter is also very low, but that's not to say that this is a flawless team. Like, there are flaws, even if you take the injuries out of account and you consider some of the holes on this roster. Like, there is some fortifying to do, and that's why I think a trade midseason has to happen. I know the deadline is still a little bit of a ways away, but they do need to make some sort of move here. And if Brennan Othmann is their move, if they're expecting him to be a permanent fixture here in the NHL and expecting him to take a big step forward and really rectify a lot of their issues, I think that's a risk, a very big risk, and not a wise decision. We've talked about Othmann and how we want to be patient with him, have him develop properly, not stunt his growth like Gallant did with some of the other kids. I think that Brennan Othmann, getting him right is really crucial, and getting him right is not forcing him into this lineup and banking on him in the postseason. It's taking your time with him and being patient. So again, I think that this team needs to make a move. I don't know how big of a move it needs to make. I don't think it needs to be like last year when they made 3 deadline trades: Tyler Mott, Patrick Kane, Vladimir Tarasenko. Those are the 3 that I remember off the top of my head. And there might have even been 1 or 2 others because Drury was out of his mind last year. And while I appreciated his ambition and he really put this team, a phenomenal team on paper to go win a cup, it didn't work out because on paper doesn't always translate to on ice. But I will say, I trust Peter Laviolette a lot. If he had that lineup from last year, I think things go differently. I think Peter Laviolette really has a handle over this team, understands how to gel the lines together, build chemistry, and get players who maybe are more offensive-minded, contributing more on the defensive end, and vice versa. So I really do have a lot of faith in Peter Laviolette. I think he was the right hire, and I think he's really proven that. It's just about getting a couple more pieces in here. Maybe it's just one piece. I think it might really just be getting one piece. Plus, you got Capo Caco coming back soon. So I think you add another player to the offensive lines. another forward in this mix. And I think that you could feel really confident heading into the postseason. So my panic meter is really low. I trusted Drury. I know that he's going to find a deal out there. He's going to make some sort of a deal by the trade deadline and fortify these lines. Again, how big of a deal, how much of a splash acquisition is it going to be? I don't think it's going to be as flashy as last year. But again, you fortify what you have. You keep building around your star players. Zibanejad, of course, Panarin is having an incredible season. Those are the guys that you want. Those are the backbones of your team, and they're playing at a high level. So as long as they continue to do so, and you just add that one piece, and you just hope that some of these other guys straighten out some of their shortcomings, I still think that this is a team that should be Stanley Cup favorites, if anything. Saying that they're fraudulent or that they're slipping behind just because they've had a little bit of inconsistencies over the past couple of weeks. Again, just look at this lineup, what it was at the start of the year to now. Injuries have affected things. Those guys are going to get healthy. As long as they stay healthy, as long as this team stays healthy and is fully healthy in time for the postseason, I'm going to feel really confident going into it.
Yeah, I'm still confident too. You're right. The Rangers are still Stanley Cup contenders. Whatever this little rough stretch of play is, it's a good thing that it's happening now, because this is giving the Rangers time to kind of figure out exactly what these problems are and how they can fix it through a trade in the deadline. I think it's March 8th, so exactly 3 months away from now, or 2 months, I should say. Sorry. And the Rangers are going to go out and get someone. I'm happy you brought up last year, because when you look at those 3 trades that they made, Mott, Tarasenko, and Kane, the best one was Tyler Mott. The Rangers don't need to go out and acquire these big stars that are going to alter the chemistry of the team. Just a bottom 6 guy to add on to that depth. That's all the Rangers need. But before I wrap up, speaking of Kane and Tarasenko, I will say that I did see earlier this week the Ottawa Senators are most likely going to be aggressively shipping Tarasenko to teams, so he might be available. And Patrick Kane did confirm that he would be willing to waive his no trade clause on the Detroit Red Wings if a team wanted to make an offer for him. So just a month later, Kane's already wanting out of Detroit. Tarasenko not going to be there. So who knows? Maybe if we want to see again with Laviolette what he can do with that dream team, it's not off the table. But I would personally stay away with it. I just wanted to re-spark that debate really quick, because I know everyone likes to talk
I would
about
be interested in Tarasenko, not Kane, though.
I agree with that. Tarasenko on the first line would be perfect. Stay away from Kane. I don't care if he's been a point per game player since signing with Detroit. Stay away. It didn't work. I don't even want to try it again. I feel like
I'm in agreement with you.
It would be risking too much on this season that has a lot of potential to end up very good. But that about wraps up this discussion, unless you have any final thoughts, Anthony. You're all good. But speaking of thoughts, I am interested to see what all you guys watching think about this season so far, this recent stretch of play. Are fans overreacting? And you're kind of in agreement with us that there's nothing to be worried about, or is your concern a little bit higher than ours? But that about wraps things up here. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss a notification. If you're watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. As I just said, leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And lastly, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers on both Instagram and X. Once again, thank you all for watching. Hopefully the Rangers will beat Vancouver later tonight, and either way, we'll be back tomorrow to discuss it. Yeah, have a good one, and let's go Rangers.